Welcome to The Bridge. We are a show which connects East and West. My name is Jason. BRICS, the collective of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has become one of the most important organizations today, and certainly the most talked about. BRICS leaders are expected to meet for the 15th BRICS Summit in South Africa from the 22nd to the 24th of August. The summit will be hosted at the Sandton Convention Center in Johannesburg. Today we have with us special guests from BRICS countries and potential future BRICS member countries. From South Africa, we have NOBUBELE RALANE, who attended BRICS Summer Program in China's prestigious Fudan University. She has worked for the Australian Embassy, the United Nations, and at the University of Johannesburg, and also as a caseworker for refugees seeking resettlement in the United States. From Colombia, we have Fernando Munoz, a media commentator traveling across China making documentaries. He is regularly featured in the media, including on China Daily, CGTN, The Global Times, and far more. From Brazil, we have Giovane Ricardo Cintra, a game localization specialist with a master's degree from Beijing Sports University in Wushu martial arts. He is currently located in Shanghai. Welcome, everyone, to the program.
Thank you, Jason.
Hello.
How is everyone today?
Hello.
Great. Enjoy
I'm
Xinjiang.
cold.
Great, fantastic.
In South Africa, I'm cold. It's still winter.
Right. Yes, of course. You're in the other hemisphere. Let's begin with Giovane.
Yeah.
Can we get your story? You're originally from Brazil and are now living in China. You studied Wushu arts. Could you tell us what originally brought you to China and why you have stayed here for the past 6 years?
All right. About my background related to China is when I was around 16 years old, I started practicing Chinese martial arts, which is like people know as Kung Fu, right? And from that, I started working as a software developer, which was my profession for about 10 years or so. And I was kind of getting a little bored of it. And I was trying to actually make Wushu my to become my main source of income instead of just a hobby. And then I was participating in some competitions. I started participating the Brazil national team and in international competitions. And with that I got a scholarship in Beijing Sports University, right, for my master's degree. And then when I saw that opportunity, I just dropped everything I had in Brazil and came to China. Then, although I practiced Wushu for a long time, I didn't have any contact with Chinese language at the time. So I had to learn Chinese for about 1 year. And then I actually entered the master's, and that was a full-on Chinese experience because all my colleagues and everything was all on Chinese. I just fell in love with the place. And after I graduated, I tried my best to find a work that I could do it here. And since language was my best thing, I just started doing game localization, which is a thing I love, right? Gaming.
So actually physical, real life fighting kind of gaming, and then also video gaming. Is that what you mean? Is video gaming?
Yeah, video gaming.
Wow, that's really interesting career path. And now from South Africa, NOBUBELE, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey to work with BRICS at Fudan University?
Well, I moved to China because I was interested in learning about the Chinese culture. At that time, I was working for the UN in Pretoria. It has always been my dream to move to China since 2016. So in 2019, I decided, this is a great chance for me to move. I think I'd served my purpose at the UN. So when I arrived in China, I decided to join the BRICS community in Shanghai. And it was quite interesting because I got a chance to actually interact with different people who are coming from the other BRICS countries, and which also enabled us to do some projects as well as research, especially during the time of COVID-19. We had to do research on how BRICS countries were cooperating during COVID-19. So it was quite an interesting journey for me, and it also gave me an opportunity to learn more about BRICS as well as the new development bank. That's where we get our funding from. So it was really interesting. Yes.
I'm going to ask you about that later. So the new development bank is connected to BRICS. Is that right? Or they're separate entities you're talking about?
Well, connected and separate at the same time. But that's where we get our fundings for projects. So if you're coming from the BRICS countries, the New Development Bank is there to provide services and also provide research in terms of the kind of project that you want to do. They have high level expertise in terms of assisting those countries in the projects that they want to do in their countries. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's very interesting. So, friend of the show, I think this is your fourth time on the show, Fernando. We asked you about your journey into China and through China in previous shows. Could you tell us again, for this show's purpose, a little bit about what brought you here and why you have made China your home?
Well, I basically decided that I wanted a challenge. I'm a modern language teacher by profession, but I've taught in places where I always understood my students. Basically, in California, I was teaching basically South American kids or Central American kids. Back in Colombia, obviously, my mother tongue, it was not a problem. So I wanted to teach people that I didn't understand, so to challenge and hone my skills. And I started looking at Asia. Japan was difficult because of my passport, regardless of education. I looked at Thailand, and income over there, not so good. And then when you pop any kind of job search in China, you get 5,000 jobs offers. So you just choose what fits you well. So I was teaching at a university back in Colombia, and I found a university here in China. So that's what I did. I decided to come here and give it a go. That was in the year 2000. So it was the wild east at that time. So to make a very long story short, I started my own company in 2005 and dedicated myself to, well, empowering the new generation of Chinese kids with the gift of languages, the gift of English, French, and Spanish. And well, until the end of 2021, I run my business, but I decided to semi-retire. I still derive income from some activities that I do related to education, but I convinced my wife to go on this journey, which has taken now more than a year and a half, traveling around China, documenting the people, the qualities of China that have yet to be shown. So it's been very, very interesting. We've done most of the East Coast last year, and this year we're working on the west side of China. We just did 3 months in Yunnan, and we're finishing our 4th month here in Xinjiang, a place that is very important for BRICS, and we'll probably share more about that later. So yeah, that's
Wow.
about me, Jason.
There's a lot more to tell, actually, but that's the very short version. So coming to the topic of BRICS, which is why we're all here today, in 1955, the first Asian African Conference was held in Bandung, which, according to the website in South Africa, kind of starts BRICS. It's the beginning of the story of BRICS, which at some point was also just called BRIC. But in 2010, South Africa was invited to join. I hope I got the date correct. And in 2011, South Africa joined, forming BRICS with an S. And now there are 40 interested parties. I wonder what kind of acronym that's going to make. So from each of your point of view, what does BRICS represent to you and what does it represent to your nation? Let's start with NOBUBELE.
Well, being a member of BRICS, South Africa being a member of BRICS has enabled us to find our position and influence, especially in the global sector. And being a member of BRICS has given us access to policy as well as technical expertise. We need that, actually, and it has also established our economy. So while we are part of BRICS, we're able to get some funding support from the new development bank, and also it has strengthened some of our activism in the global stage, as I've mentioned, particularly around multilateral institutions. So, yeah.
Fernando, what does BRICS mean to you and
Yep.
to the future of Colombia? What does Colombia stand to gain, or how it will be able to participate in the wider world if it is able to join BRICS? And what does the world gain from BRICS?
Well, talking about Colombia, there are different spheres. There's different levels of benefits that the country stand to gain. The first one has to do with currencies. We basically, like most countries around the world, trade in US dollars. So when the US dollar fluctuates because of whatever mismanagement there is in the US, then our exporters, our producers, which are mainly agricultural products, suffer. It's something that is out of our control. So being able to access markets, even the Latin American market, in currencies that have nothing to do with the US dollar would be very, very beneficial to our producers, to our agricultural sector. That's the first thing. The second thing would have to do with infrastructure, and this is something that I've said in interviews in the past. We are at the end of the Andean mountain system, and it's a very mountainous country. We have 3 mountain systems that split from the Andes once the Andes enters Colombia, which means that transportation by land, trucks and 18-wheelers and all these things are very, very complicated, very difficult, very slow. We would benefit from infrastructure like the ones we see here in China. I've had the opportunity to travel around so many provinces already, and we just read a statistic just yesterday that China is close to having its 1 millionth bridge, including railways and highways. We could use some of that infrastructure in my country. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, well, I suppose that when a country enters into loans and into agreements with BRICS, there are, I hope, very clear stipulations regarding the use of that money. Corruption is a very big problem in our country, and China, India, Russia, all these countries should demand clarity in the way that the money is used. So I'm hoping that those 3 things would change my country for the better. And I'm really hopeful that we actually move forward with a full membership of BRICS. We're playing with some loans and whatnot, and yeah, I mean that's gonna be useful, but we need more. We need a lot more from BRICS. And how is BRICS changing the world? Well, that's a very long answer. Basically, it's another option for the world. There's no more IMF. There's no more World Bank. There could be other options. The great Ben, I forgot his name, Ben Norton, I think, just published a tweet that Argentina has just applied for another loan from IMF to pay a pre-existing loan from IMF. It's just a situation that we need to break away from that. And I'm really hoping that BRICS is the answer for the global south.
Wow, quite an answer. Giovane, same question. And you're the B in BRICS, so right up first. I should have asked you first. What does BRICS mean to you personally, and what do you think it means for Brazil and the wider world?
Okay, well, that's a very big question, right? I think, like, at first, BRICS for me represents like this kind of diversity, right? You see, like, that's the union of several different countries that actually doesn't have much to do with each other. I mean, like, they have different political views, they have like different races, different economical goals, but still they can join together in this kind of like big objective of just like mutual cooperation, right? So I think this kind of brings a new type of view to geopolitics, right? Like, we're not just having like the same old people just giving orders from top above, and everyone else has to obey them. And I think, of course, like for developing countries, this is something that everybody's looking for, right? For Brazil, I think like my answer would be like very similar to Fernando, because in Brazil, we have been like, how to say it, although we have a very big country with like lots of like very rich in natural resources and labor force, but we still are dependent of the first, I would say like the the first world. And because of some of our political decisions through the last decades, we lack a lot of industrialization and infrastructure. So of course, with the exchanges of technology and science, like stuff like this, of course, also the currency, uh, Brazil might be able to actually level up with the players in this. Like I guess in 10 to 20 years or so, like being positive, but still, right? Like we have to do a first step, and with railroads, especially like Fernando said, like we need it, right? That's the thing that connects everyone, and we can actually do like, how can I say it?
Physical interconnectivity, like infrastructure, developing into a more modern economy. That's what I'm getting, yes?
Yeah, exactly. Like the modern economy depends on like the products flowing properly, and a good industry to actually make products, not only exporting primary products for yourself, right?
Right. That's very that's a fantastic answer. Thank you. There are 3 pillars to BRICS, and I'm only just learning these from the website actually in the last few days. So there are 3: political and security cooperation, financial and economic cooperation, and culture and people-to-people cooperation. And our show is the bridge, so we're all about people-to-people connectivity and cultural connectivity. So I really wanted to emphasize that for us. Each time, each of the 3 of you have moved between countries that are either in BRICS nations or which are interested in joining BRICS. So for yourselves, you are the vehicles of people-to-people exchange. Each one of you is a person who is actively engaged in people-to-people exchanges. So having moved from your home country to China, what are some of the experiences that you've had in China that you would like to share with folks back home about your life here in China that maybe the people back home might not be able to relate to? Fernando.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is security and safety. We had lived through a war on drugs that was kind of like Monroe Doctrine 2.0. We have become dependent on financial aid, military financial aid from the United States, and for us to get away from that is very difficult. This has led to societal changes as well, because when the big cartels were dismantled, there were a lot of smaller criminals. There was an army of smaller criminals that started to affect the peacefulness and the harmony of the country. We've been dealing with that situation for many, many decades. So the first thing that comes to mind is safety, security. You can go out at night anywhere in China and not be looking over your back as to what's going to happen. That is, whoever I talk about Colombia with, I say, like, you've got to be aware that that's very different when you go to Colombia. If you're a Chinese person going to Colombia, you got to really, really watch out. And it's the biggest thing that you notice when you come to China. Like, oh, well, I can actually walk around holding my phone without having to worry. I can open my car without having to check that somebody is just jump in the car with me and do something bad. Or, do you know what I'm saying? It's something that if you haven't lived in a country that has serious crime, you don't think about it. But when you come to a place like China, you're like, I can actually relax. So that's the first thing, safety and security. There's so much more, but I'll let the others share a little bit what they think, and then maybe we can revisit the answer with other aspects.
Sure, absolutely. Giovane, could you tell us our listeners a little bit about your time in China and for your Brazilian friends, and if we have any Brazilian listeners, and what you would like to share with them about your time in China.
Well, I think I should say like a more about my perspective towards China, like the change I had like from ever since like I came from Brazil to here, right? Because I think in first place, like Brazilian people, maybe in other countries as well, like they have lots of misconceptions about China. Either because I don't know, they don't have access to much information about China, or maybe because they're being victimized by some kind of evil propaganda. But what happens is like I remember like very well when I was going to China, like preparing my suitcase. I was like preparing dental floss because I don't know, maybe they don't have dental floss in China, right? My mom like was super scared about like, well, he will be all right there, like he have like clean water, or like some like very very stupid misconceptions about a country that's actually so much developed, right? And then after coming here, like you just see like everything is normal. Actually, like everyone is normal. Like there's no difference. Actually, the country is even more developed than Brazil, right?
Mm.
And well, as soon as I saw this, like I started trying to tell of people as much as possible that like, you know, like life here's normal, man. Like there's no people, I don't know, eating dogs or everyone living in a rice field, you know. that that should be like the real culture shock people talk about.
You know,
Like,
actually,
seeing that people is normal.
in 2011 or 2012, my first time to China, I had a similar experience. I was way overpacking, including dental floss, because I just didn't know. And I had the same experience. Okay, wow. Okay, there's a 7-Eleven or whatever. Like, it's just like anywhere else. Okay, NOBUBELE, you returned to South Africa from China. But how has your time in China, and as someone who's worked with BRICS at Fudan, informed your conversation with South Africans about China?
All right. Well, I'd love to agree with Giovane and Fernando. There's a lot of misconceptions about China. And when I returned back to South Africa, I had to do a lot of unpacking just to inform people how China is and how developed it is, and how forward-thinking, the people are, in China. And I remember when I had to leave, my family was a little bit tense about, the traveling to China. Because they used to ask me questions, how are you going to survive in China as an African person? Because of obviously of the misconception going around, China is racist and all of those things. So I was a bit afraid, but at the same time, I said to myself, well, I want to experience it myself. I want first-hand experience so that I'm able to go back and tell people, okay, fine, China is like this. This is what I have experienced. And what I've learned during my journey is that I was able to forge new friendships with people all over the world. I mean, I stayed in Shanghai, so Shanghai is more cosmopolitan, and I was able to think outside the box. Not to say I was not able to do things in South Africa, but I think China fast-tracked me, And also I opened up my own business. I was part of many network groups in Shanghai and Hangzhou. So it was a great experience for me. And at the same time, I noticed that BRICS has, some of, it has people exchanges. So that's where you exchange information in terms of the Young Diplomats Forum, the parliamentarian forums, as well as the union forums and also media. So that also helped me to just get involved in these forums and understand how other countries are doing, what are they planning, and what are their hopes in terms of moving forward. Because as Fernando mentioned, when he arrived in China, he was more settled. You don't have to look around because of safety. I come from South Africa and crime is very high, especially now after COVID-19. As a woman, I'm afraid to go out alone most of the time. I have to make sure there's a male counterpart. accompanying me to certain places. I have to come back home early. It's not like China. And when I came back, that's what my family told me. Listen, as you had mentioned, China is safe, while South Africa is the opposite. So please make sure that you adhere to protocol. So those are some of the things that I miss now about China, and I am planning to return back because I came back to South Africa because I hadn't seen my family for a long time. So now that I have seen my family and I've done whatever that I needed to do, I think it's time for me to return back and to continue with whatever that I was doing and also accelerate my business.
Well, maybe the four of us can all get together when you get back then.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it happen.
Yeah, Fernando, you said you wanted to follow up a little bit about your experience with living here in China and what you would like to inform people back home, maybe a little, or people outside of China, about what life in China is really like.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed that is very different and that people don't understand is how developed, for example, the internet is. The level of e-commerce, the amount of money that is moved through e-commerce, something that is so rudimentary in Colombia. Just to give you a couple of figures, the level of coverage for internet, not 5G, okay, 4G, in rural areas in Colombia is below 40%. Now, if you go to main cities in Colombia, and you're not doing all that well, it's below 60%. So that's internet access to tools like the Internet of Things, the modernization, the automation, so many things that could help industries and economies. That doesn't exist in Colombia. That's just not available to people. People don't know that they don't have it because there's no appetite for learning about China. There are organizations and people who try to nurture this communication and this friendship, and that's all well and good, but the vast majority of people are very much following an American trend. Basically, we follow whatever American, it goes from the news to fashion to music to entertainment. Everything is what America feeds us, that's what we take in. What America tells us, that's what we follow. So when you present an alternative that nowadays America is trying to tarnish, is trying to demonize, there's just no reception. I have been in the country for 23 years. I have been in social media for now 6 years. I have been in mainstream media in China for the last 3 years. I have done one interview with any Colombian media organization. I became an honorary citizen in 2011 and doing something that very few foreigners are doing, like traveling in an RV through Xinjiang. There's zero interest. There's no interest. And on my social media, I'm constantly tagging and tweeting and say like, hey, Colombian media, look what I'm doing. Hey, Colombian media, have a look. Hey, any interest? Zero. We're just blindfolded, just like horses, following the path that America sets for us. And it's challenging. I'm not going to stop doing it, but I think I need a nudge. I need somebody to hey, maybe talk to this person who's got something to tell you and might be interesting to your audience. But other than that, we're stuck. I would like people to know the level of development that China has in so many levels. And the internet is just one that came to my mind just as we were talking.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, I would like to add to that too, because when I returned back home, I had so many ideas of the kind of things that I'd like to change. And one of the ideas is basically e-commerce. I mean, it's very slow. You get deliveries after 2 weeks. And I was hoping, okay, how do we change this? I need to sit down and come up with a strategy, and obviously approach relevant people in order to change the system, system that is too slow. Some people are not willing to learn. And obviously one of the reasons because when you talk about China, people think, oh, well, you live in a bamboo house. What can you tell me? You live in a bamboo house in China. But now, because people know that I've been in China and I take pictures as much as I can, people have more questions about China. And I even created a group of people who are interested in learning about the Chinese culture. Some of them want to do business in China, but they're not sure which channels to use. And there's also students who are interested in moving to China to learn. So there's a lot that's happening. A lot of people are open-minded, not a lot, but a few of them who know me are more open-minded now about China and what it has to offer.
Well, I'd like to say that, people-to-people exchanges can go both ways. So for people in China considering moving to your home country, what kind of advice would you give them? Let's start with Giovane. What do you think? Someone from China is thinking about moving to Brazil to study at a university or there's work there. What kind of things would you tell them about their experience?
All right. Let me start with positive things, right? Like Brazil is a beautiful country, and people there are very how to say it, very positive and happy, and they're very receptive towards any foreigners, right? So whoever person goes there, especially for studying, you will be very well received. As long as you're open to having friends from having Brazilian friends, you will fit in super easily. Of course, the main problem, just as Fernando and NOBUBELE said, it's violence, right? You need to be streetwise. And if you go by yourself in the street and you cannot just go flailing around yourself, right? You need to understand how to walk and how not to be targeted by some people.
Goodness.
So that's the thing. The best thing you can do is actually have Brazilian friends. If you're followed by people that can give you some hints on how to walk on the street, probably not a big problem. But it is a great environment for basically everything. You're going to study there, or if you're going to work, you're gonna have a very relaxing life, man. People in Brazil, they really know how to make parties and how to I would say different from China. People don't take work as, I would not say seriously, but they will not be that hardcore about working. We like our rests.
Nice. Okay.
Weekends are weekends. Respect the time.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, actually. A little bit slower. So, NOBUBELE, what would you say for folks who are considering coming to South Africa to study or work? Or, people from any BRICS country, really.
Yeah, South Africa is a beautiful country. I was born in Cape Town, and Cape Town has lovely beaches and places places to visit. Many tourists actually visit Cape Town because Johannesburg is a business district. But in terms of culture, we are a diverse culture, different cultures, different languages, 12 languages.
Wow.
12 local languages, 9 provinces. And what I can say is about South Africans, they are very welcoming from the airport. The immigration officers are forever smiling, and they look forward to having new people, people from other countries in South Africa. And in terms of crime, crime is there, but as Giovane has mentioned, you need to be street smart. Don't show people your phone. Don't speak on the phone while you're walking on the street because someone will snatch it. In terms of food, we have lots of different types of cuisines, and all I can say is South African people are very positive people. They have a positive spirit. Whether there's COVID-19 or there's floods, we are forever positive that, oh, well, we're going to get over this. So, yeah, we are a great nation. And we look forward to having more people from different countries. Our tourism is open. Our economy is, because of COVID-19, things are a bit rocky at the moment, but people are very hopeful that, as we move on with time, things will get better. And in terms of work, people are willing to work. South Africans are moving to other countries, not just China, but they are moving to, Europe, US. I'm not sure about South America, but I've noticed some South Africans moving to South America, but there's only a few of them. But then, yeah, we are a very open country, and we want to receive tourists, and we want people to come in and experience South Africa, not just as tourists, but as people who want to come to study here. We are also open in terms of doing business with internationals. So, yeah.
Fernando, would you like to weigh in? What would you tell people from other countries?
Yes.
Yeah, coming from around the
You
world.
know I have to talk about avocados.
Okay, let's go for it.
You know I have to talk about avocados. But with our geography, with our topography, we have such variety of fruits and vegetables and produce that's one of the first things that is going to blow any visitor's mind. The size of our fruit, the size of the vegetables is just crazy, and how cheap it is. Also, probably like Brazil, our meat is actually quite cheap. We do have a lot of cattle in the north, and that makes cheap very affordable. We eat meat every day. The next thing that I would like to say is we are pretty much like Brazil as well, a country that was culturally created by people that came to us. So we have our native people, but we also have the Europeans, the Spaniards, and we have the African slaves who were brought to work in the sugarcane fields and to do the things that the Europeans didn't want to do. And that created a mixture. So you're going to find people that look like a wide array of people all in one single place. That is going to be and it's such a small country. It's not like big like Brazil. So that's going to be something like, wow. There are even people that look like Chinese. They're like Chinese features and everything. It's one of the things that surprises a lot of people. Like there's not one type of Colombian person. You go from the blonde hair, blue-eyed, to just a person that looks like the natives of the region, and anything in between. The second thing that I would like to say is different regions, because of this geographical separation, develop their own culture. So we have different music, we have different fashion, we have different ways of talking. So you move 300 kilometers and people talk completely different. They say different words. Like, to give you an example, they say foco, while in other places they say bombilla, which is a light bulb. But that's just people in the same country, 300-kilometer difference. You go to the important thing, we have coast on the Caribbean, the Atlantic, and the Pacific as well. And those two cultures, even though they're coastal, they're very different as well. They talk in a different way. They have their own music. They have their own fashion. One of the most beautiful things that we export are YU bags. YU is a tribe, is an indigenous people from the north of Colombia called Santa Marta. And they make these knitted bags that hit all the fashion capitals of the world a few years ago. And an interesting thing is that when you come to China, I actually saw bags that look very similar. So I was like, this looks just like our YU bags in Colombia. So look, a very small country. You can go anywhere within one day's travel, and you'll be surprised at the diversity. It's just from the scenery to the food to the people to the music to the absolutely everything is going to be different in less than a day's journey. So if you go to Colombia, don't go for a short time.
Wow. Okay. So we should spend, that's how you travel. You go to somewhere and you spend months there. I don't know if the rest of us can do that as easily as you, Fernando. So I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about what you think is going to happen in this conference at BRICS. What's the future of BRICS? What does it mean what does BRICS mean? What does it mean to people? And what are your predictions for the organization? Let's start with NOBUBELE.
All right, so BRICS is an important source of foreign direct investments, and in key areas such as mining, financial services, transportation, and as well as IT. So looking at the future, I think BRICS will lead a significant job creation for majority of young people. Because what I've picked up is that a lot of young people are involved in BRICS because at the end of the day, unemployment is affecting the youth currently. So majority of the youth is now joining hands and learning more about BRICS policies and how BRICS and the new development bank can inject some funds in order to create employment. And on the other hand, it will increase trade amongst mutual, investors, and which includes the identification of new businesses and new opportunities that will broaden, young entrepreneurs' skills. So it will broaden up their skills. And obviously with those exchanges, different countries will come together and obviously find solutions on how to create businesses and create more employment. That's what I think, yeah.
Giovane?
Well, my view is a little more. I think just like I said in the beginning, like the thing I see the most positive about BRICS is its diversity, right? Like the promise of a multipolar world, right? I think it's kind of like doing the right step towards this kind of future where like we have a more multipolar world where people have like they can be different, they can have like different views of their political standpoints and whatever, and just like be there and not be waging wars. Like maybe BRICS might be the answer, at least in the short time, like for world peace.
Actually, I'm
very optimistic.
I have very similar feelings as you. Growing up, seeing the importance of the G7 and then the G8 and then it was G7 plus one and then it was G8 and then it was G7 again. It was like the wealthiest countries are still leading the world. And I think that maybe that's upside down from the way that it should be after colonialism, right? So for me, when I look at BRICS, it's a different set of ideas coming from, the developing world, and increasingly it's becoming a more developed world. And so for me personally, it looks like a new way to look at the world. And when you say the words multipolarity, that's exactly my own sentiment. Fernando, what do you think? What do you think about the future of BRICS? What does it mean to people?
For me, to build on what Giovanni said, but pinpoint a little bit more, is about the end of US dollar hegemony in world trade. I have to revert to the Latin American sentiment, and I'm sure that my Brazilians will understand. Imagine a world where America is not free to sanction countries like Venezuela, a country like Cuba. Imagine what that world would be. A country like North Korea, a country like Iran, a country like China. So when we have an alternative to trade and when that volume begins to increase, China just had its trading exchange being higher in renminbi than in dollar just a few days ago. So this is, in Spanish we say, tiene más reversa un avión. It's like you can't reverse it, you can't even reverse a jet. This is happening. We're walking away from the US dollar, and this is going to be good for the world itself, because countries that have been under the thumb of, this colonial countries, colonialist countries, are going to have room to breathe, opportunity to develop, opportunity to trade, opportunity to grow. Um, and that's many countries in the global south. That's countries that haven't had the opportunity to explore their own independence because they haven't had the opportunity. It's always, the IMF and the World Bank have always been about what fits and what suits and what meets the needs of developed countries in the first world. Well, this is going to be different. This is an agreement that is going to listen to the countries. What do you need? What can we do for you? You see, for example, all these forgiveness of debt that we hear again and again. Well, we hear because we are interested in this, but the media doesn't report any of these things. That's important for countries when they get room to breathe. So, yeah, for me, BRICS revolves around what Xi Jinping told Putin when they met a few months back. These are changes that we haven't seen in 100 years. And I think that what he meant is getting away from the US dollar as a trade currency. And that's going to be so, so good for the world.
NOBUBELE, I see you nodding and okay. Can you add a little bit to that?
Well, many other countries, especially developing countries, have been complaining for years. And as Giovane has mentioned, countries want to breathe. Countries are tired of debt. We want to be able to trade freely amongst each other. And besides trading, we also want to have a say in these policies. Countries want to be able to say, no, I don't want to trade like this, I want to trade like that. So those are the things that we are looking forward to. And as you know, the African history is not so good. We are still in debt in Africa, and somehow it always feels that Africa is not getting out of debt. We are getting more and more in debt, and our leaders, I don't want to say they are not doing anything, but it seems like they are forced to sign these agreements, these bilateral agreements coming from the US or the European Union, and we don't want that. I just want to reflect back to some of the projects we used to do, which were funded by the European Union in South Africa. Some of these projects were pushed projects. It seemed like the EU was not in conversations with, let's say, South Africa, where the project would be implemented. And we want those changes whereby they would ask the developing countries, how do we implement this project in your country? What kind of policies does your country have? How do you move forward because you cannot bring a project from Europe and expect that project to work in Africa, right? Africa has different policies, so those are the kind of changes that we look forward to. Yeah.
Well, let's get a little bit less formal. And each of you has lived in China for various periods of time, and I think that's what we all have in common. So could you tell us a little bit about your favorite experience, your favorite memory, maybe even just your favorite food about your time? Fernando, your time has been you have a lot more to select from maybe. About your time living in China. NOBUBELE, let's start with you. What do you think?
All right, my favorite food, I think it's they call it a baozi. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah.
Yes. I used to eat. I eat that every morning whenever I go to work. That used to be my favorite. That is my favorite. And when I landed in China, I first lived in Henan province in Zhengzhou. So as you know, Henan is one of the historical provinces of China. So I really enjoyed my stay because I was able to travel and see these historical monuments and take photos and learn more about about China and its history. So that's what I enjoyed the most. So once I completed my contract in Henan, I moved to Shanghai. That's where I enjoyed the vibrancy of China, and it's more cosmopolitan. I met many people, great people from different countries, and it has been great for me. I was able to network, as I'd mentioned, and build solid goals while I was living in China, in Shanghai, and it also gave me an opportunity to think of furthering my studies in diplomacy, and also focus on my business. I think, yeah, but focus on my business, trading with different countries, and also allow China to trade with other countries, because that's what I also wanted to focus on. Find clients who want to trade with other countries, not only in Africa, but in other countries too. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds, I think
Standing point, yeah.
that's my experience. Shanghai is definitely very vibrant. As someone who lives in Beijing, I always think in the back of my head, oh yeah, but Beijing this and Beijing that. But Shanghai is very lovely. Giovane, what about you're in Shanghai right now, right?
Yes,
Can you
I
tell
am.
us a little bit about your favorite memories, your favorite experiences, or maybe your favorite food in China?
All right. Well, at first, like Fernando said just now, like that Colombia is a very diverse country, right? Just like as Brazil, and this just something came to my mind. Like,
Sure.
um, I would say like lots of Chinese people ask me like, oh, if I go to Brazil, will I stand out? I say no problem. Like they're so diverse that like if you don't open your mouth, people will not know you're a foreigner.
Oh wow.
And although Brazil is a very diverse country, right? When I came to China, I was not expecting to meet such diversity. Like when I started doing my master's degree here, because like we had to do some Chinese classes before, I met people from several different countries at the same time. So like the experience I had here was not only an experience in China, it was like a very international experience, and not only like people from would say like from America, from Europe. No, I would meet people from like East Asia, people from Africa, and this was actually a very big eye opener for me, like for knowing actually people, just like I said before, like people from other countries are also normal, right? We have this kind of thing that like you see a country's name and you have like in your mind like 3 or 4 characteristics that defines that country and the whole thing about it. You don't think about people there, right? But as soon as you meet people from that country, like you kind of relate a lot more to them. And yeah, that's it, like empathy, right? And
Yeah.
about food, I guess. About food, I'm super a very big fan of Chinese food, like everywhere. As I came here before I was afraid of eating Chinese food, but as soon as you get taste for it, there's no stop. My fiance is from Hunan, right? I lived her because of pandemics. I was there for the Chinese New Year, so I stayed stuck in Hunan for about 4 months. So in there, living in Hunan, which is like basically the capital of spicy food, right? I went from a person that cannot eat spicy at all, like to a person that actually crave for spicy food. And Shanghai just like had something like very magical about. I don't know how they do it, but you just cannot get enough from it. And then I don't know, like if you go to south, you go to Yunnan, and you get like those foods that have like uh, several different textures and several different flavors in one dish. And you can feel everything, and there's a huge explosion of flavor. Like how can you not like that, man? You go to Xinjiang, you go like to the north, you get their karo, like how is their barbecue,
Chuan.
right?
Chwar.
Their barbecue is like very similar to the barbecue we have in South America. So like you feel kind of at home with them. You have like I don't know, like noodles from Dongbei. Like
Yeah.
everywhere you go in China, there's lots of a very big variety of different yet delicious food. I think like going to China just like for testing, not testing, how to say it, to taste their food. It's like an experience in itself.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Fernando? Some of your, if you could just cherry pick a few memories out of your 20 years experience.
Look, when I became an honorary citizen, it was something that actually started in 2006. I was chosen as a consultant, language consultant, to do a project for my city, Dongguan in Guangdong. And we actually had to travel all over the city to each and every department to present how they do their work and what kind of practices are exemplary to share with the world at a UN sponsored competition called the IFPRA, the Livable Communities. So through those 10 months, I was able to really see how difficult, how complicated, how challenging, how demanding it is to run a city. It's something that we never think about. We never think about where our garbage goes. We never think about where our water comes from. We never think about, oh, those beautiful gardens on the highway. I wonder who takes care of them. Like, we never think about any of those things, but I was able to see behind the curtain, behind the infrastructure, to see what it takes to build it, to run it, to maintain it, to keep it. And that just gave me a love for the city, an appreciation for the city. And having done that, when we finished in 2006, I started to think, okay, how can I give back? How can I help the city just get better? And that's when I started a project of taking photos of road signs that had incorrect translations. And I put it together in a small book and I handed it to the government. And I said, like, I think this would improve the image of the city. Do with it as you wish. 5 years went by, nothing happened. But in 2010, 4 years, sorry, 2010, we had the Asian Games in Guangdong, in Guangzhou. And Dongguan was going to host one of the events, the powerlifting, because Dongguan has an Olympic medalist. So it became important for the government, okay, let's internationalize the city, let's fix all the road signs. And then some journalist, I don't know how or where, he just presented my book like, this foreigner gave you this book like 4 years ago. Why haven't you done this before? Oh my God. So I became a hot topic in the city and increased my visibility, so to speak. So a lot of changes did take place in the city because of something that I did. That sense of belonging, you cannot, I get goosebumps when I talk about it. You cannot replace that. It's my home. It is my home. Even the slogan of the city was something that I had something to do with. So that's just the most memorable thing. And they had the kindness to honor me with this award, this distinction, and that's it. I don't know what else I can tell you. There's nothing that compares to that sense of belonging that I feel. It's not for everyone. Not everybody has the same disposition to give, right? A lot of people just come here and take. But that to me, it defined my existence here in China. And that's when I decided, well, I'm going to be here forever. This is where I'm going to make it. I'm going to make my home and my family. And yeah, I have no plans on leaving this country. I just wanted to say one final thing that, well, we were talking about BRICS, if I may. Think about BRICS as poverty alleviation going global. That's the way I like to see it. It's doing projects like what they've done here to lift people out of poverty, but at a global scale, with the cooperation of every single member. That's the way I see it, and that's the way I would like people to remember BRICS. It's just the wonderful, magnificent improvement of life quality that poverty alleviation is going global. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's a beautiful story. Any last thoughts from anyone on our panel? Does anyone have anything to share? All right, if you would like, for our listeners at home, if you would like to be part of this conversation, please email us at welovethebridge@gmail.com. Thank you, NOBUBELE, for joining us. Thank you, Giovane, for joining us. And thank you, Fernando, for joining us.
My pleasure.